Hello, my name is Jim Tadlock. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I am currently working for Lowe's Home Improvement. I was furloughed from my last professional position, and so this is an opportunity that allows me to do something in that interim. So I look forward to this opportunity. My method for prioritizing projects, I believe, is a simple one. It's prioritizing what's most important for the customer or the business, and they could be one and the same. It is important for me and my experiences to always pay attention to what the customer thinks is most important. Now, in some instances, you have to make tough decisions, but it's what's most important for the customer, in my experience, that is how I prioritize. So if you run into issues where you have delays on a project, it's important to understand what the high priority items for that customer are on that project and try to prioritize those at the top of the list. I found that's always been the best approach to take. And I believe that that is the best approach to take in every project, is just understand what the business priorities are or are the customer's priorities are, and prioritize projects in that regard. It's been my experience in the past that multiple projects happen all the time in just about every organization that I've worked with. I have had to juggle multiple integration projects at the same time. It's just the nature of the business. I come from a hospitality industry where you have multiple hotels that you have to work individually with, and at times you're working at during the same time period with multiple hotels. That's just the background that I come from, and so yes, my experience has been having to have a flexible project schedule and the ability to work with multiple entities at the same time. My method for documenting projects varies. It depends on the organization that I've worked with, but primarily the method for documenting projects has been with Microsoft Project. Although not all users have Microsoft Project, so I would end up just downloading that into an Excel spreadsheet. We would use Excel spreadsheet from that point, but I've also used other project management tools, web-based tools like Basecamp, Smartsheet, also ServiceNow was one of the applications that was used in my last organization. So again, I'm most familiar with Microsoft Project, and that's how I would document my projects. But then I would also convert them over to an Excel spreadsheet for business users to be able to access. And again, web-based tools such as Basecamp, Smartsheet, and ServiceNow. I have minimal experience with workflow documentation, although I'm familiar with the concept of workflow documentation like Agile and ITIL. But I have minimal experience working with workflow documents. Again, I've experience with them. I just haven't necessarily worked with them directly. In my career, I've had to be a bit more flexible in how I work with projects. I've typically worked with small IT teams, and we're typically not as structured, haven't been as structured in other opportunities that I've worked in. So I do know how workflow documentation works, and I've seen it, but I've not worked with it terribly, with a great deal of experience myself. I have had to implement new processes. That's a lot of what I have done in my career. One particular instance would be implementing a new credit card process that was integrating into our project management system at the time. It's important to understand what those business requirements are for that new process to ensure that you have proper documentation in place. So, for example, business requirements documentation, you want to make sure you have that in place. And once I have that documentation, it's a matter of creating a high-level scope, passing that information back to the business owners, make sure they agree with that scope, developing a project plan, as detailed a project plan as you can possibly get. Pass that back to the business owners, make sure they agree with that project plan, make sure it meets with their objectives, and then move forward with the development effort at that point. If you're working with third-party vendors, make sure you're communicating on a weekly, if not daily basis with your teams, either third-party vendors, internal development, whatever the case may be, and follow your project plan from that point. Make sure you do your best to stick to that plan, and hopefully the new process comes out successfully. It's a matter of getting the development in place, getting that development into a QA lab, testing it properly, getting it rolled out to your production environment as quickly as possible. Hopefully you're on schedule and you're on budget. But yes, I have had to implement new processes in my career. That's how I typically would do that. And yeah, I've had a great deal of success with that. In my career, I have had to work with many different departments, business owners, project managers, development groups, third-party vendors, and it's important that you keep open lines of communication. Again, in my experience, it's always been a weekly conference call to discuss a project. There are many different types of communication. There's what used to be Skype. There's all sorts of messaging tools that you can use. What was the last one? I can't recall what the last one was that I used. I'm sorry about that, but there are many different types of communication methods that you can use nowadays. Conference calls, video conference calls, emails, chat tools. So yes, I've used all of those in my career, and they've worked very successfully. I find it's most helpful for me to have weekly conference calls, if not more frequent than that, but at least weekly conference calls for projects that I'm working on, to have all departments that are involved in that project on that call. And yeah, that seems to work best for me. When I'm not working, I'm trying to entertain my little Jack Russell Terrier. My wife and I like to go out for hikes as well. Here in the Nashville area, we have some hills that you can lots of trails that you can hike, and so that's a favorite pastime for us as well. I like to read a bit, make sure I'm up to speed on different technologies, keep in touch with keep on top of those technology fields that I've previously worked in, the hospitality industry being one of those. But just make sure I don't lose touch with what's going on in that industry, and technology that's involved in that industry. But not in the office. I typically like to walking a lot with my Jack Russell Terrier and my wife, and we like to walk. We like to get out and hike. Just like to enjoy the neighborhood and take in all that it has to offer. Yes, I confirm you may use this video for hiring and evaluation purposes.